Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's May 11th. We're calling the meeting to order. Board Secretary, would you do the roll call, please?
Directors Dwyer, Anzini, Mansfield, and Day present. Director Penn absent. General Manager Vandier present. General Counsel Polson present. Board Clerk Ditmore present. President Anzini, directors are present. A quorum is established.
Okay. Will we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? And I will lead. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There's giggling going on back there.
Take a cheap shot.
All right. We will now move to item B, to adopt the agenda.
I'll move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt the agenda as presented. We will now vote.
Nope, we have to do public
Oh,
comment.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
I want to make this a fast meeting. Anyway, no shortcuts.
Public comment on the adoption of today's agenda is now open. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. We will then take comments from those who are participating virtually. Please refer to the instructions on the first page of today's agenda.
Okay.
President Anzini, does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the adoption of the agenda. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt today's agenda moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Mansfield. We're ready for the vote.
Okay.
Oh, no. How do I do his if he's gone? Because Director Penn is gone, it's not coming up.
We can do it by roll call, by vote.
I can do his.
Excuse for a minute for technical difficulties.
I apologize. We're going to have to re-vote just so that I can block out Director Penn.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Go ahead and move it up. Director Dwyer, there we go. All right. Thank you so
Okay.
much. Motion passes.
All right. Next, we'll move to public comment regarding items that aren't on the agenda. Any members from the audience would like to speak to items that are not on the agenda?
We will now open public comment for items not on today's agenda. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide a public comment, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. We will then take comments from those participating virtually. Please refer to the instructions on the first page of today's agenda.
My name is Jenny Lundeen. So I had sent a letter out voicing my concern about herbicide application in our national forest. So I am just here to officially put it on record and expand a little bit on some of the background and reasons for my concern. So I am local to El Dorado County. I live in Pollock Pines. I forage, snowboard, hike, fish, hunt, swim in our national forest year-round. So, my concern runs much more deeply than just our water supply, but that is obviously the reason for me to be here. I was out in our national forest and came upon what appeared to me to be an improperly posted herbicide application sign posted to a snag tree stating, attention, herbicide has been applied, do not enter. Do not collect plants from this area for food or medicine, and to contact the Placerville Ranger Station. There was no note of an EPA number, no note of when or where the application had actually been applied, or when it was safe to re-enter the area. So no additional information was publicly available when I contacted the ranger station. So I was looking for maps and specific areas where the application had occurred. On 5.8, there was a publicly available folder that contained separate maps, none of them compiled. They're just a bunch of separate documents in there. So the Forest Service is claiming that they have no legal requirement to post any of the herbicide application out there, but I am deeply concerned about myself, your employees, their employees, and anyone that is using these areas or working in the areas. So the specific area, and in my letter, I referenced the Khyber side of the flume. This actually does, the specific area that I was concerned about is on the Sly Park side of the watershed, which seems to be actually more relevant to our water. And also the chemical safety concerns. The glyphosate compounds that they are using are 4 of them. Those are based on science that has been redacted and safety studies that are no longer relevant to this project. So those have been redacted since the approval or during the approval process of this. There's also another compound, Esplanade Vericro, that seems to be some kind of a blend that they make that is more persistent in the groundwater than some of those Roundup glyphosate compounds. So I'm really hoping this is not new information and that this is something that you guys are in collaboration with the Forest Service on. But considering that it was an emergency authorization, I'm seeing that not all of the comment periods were as long as they should have or would have otherwise been. So I just wanted to make sure that it's brought to your guys' attention, and I really appreciate having the time to comment and that you guys take our water safety seriously. So thank you very much.
Thank you for bringing that forward. We want to recognize the fact that you did send us letters, and it's really important that we hear from the public on same concerns that we have, making sure our water is clear and clean and safe. I'd like to bring up, I don't know if any board member wants to ask other questions, but I'd like to have this agendized, if we can, to see where we are on the status of working with the U.S. Forestry. And yes, this impacts our Sly Park water and our whole system, so.
I'd like to indicate that we did receive the information you sent us, and our staff are in the process of reviewing it, evaluating it. As soon as we've collected everything we need to provide a response, we will agendize it, and at that time, we will reach out directly to you to let you know when that's going to be. So that will give you additional opportunity to hear what we say, but then also be able to speak to what your thoughts are. So look for that at a coming up meeting, but we will make sure we reach out directly so you're aware of when that will be.
Thank you very much for coming forward. Anybody from online that would like to discuss things that are not on the agenda?
President Anzini, does not appear that any members of the public, any other members of the public are wishing to comment on this item or on non-agenda items. We're ready to move on to communications.
Yes. Okay, well, General Manager.
Thank you. So the last couple of weeks have been pretty busy. I was able to attend the Association California Water Agencies Joint Powers Insurance Authority Summit, as well as the Aqua Conference in Sacramento. And at that conference was an immense honor received by my colleague, Brian Paulson. He was the recipient of the 2026 Association of California Water Agencies Excellence in Water Leadership Award. The award recognizes The award recognizes individuals who have made a remarkable and visible contribution to the enhancement, protection, or development of water resources in California. He was selected for this year's award based on a host of impressive collaborations and contributions to California water, especially related to the Surplus Land Act and in protecting established water rights. Well done on this achievement, Brian.
And when is your GQ spread coming out?
Well, thank you. It is an absolute honor, and I'm quite humbled to receive the award. I thought I was embarrassed standing in front of, however many people at the conference, but this is next level. So thank you for that. And no, I really appreciate the recognition. Thank you very much.
We're proud of you, and you represent EID well, especially in legislative issues, and appreciate all your endeavors.
Let's put that in the lobby.
Well, I'd like to recommend a quick photo op.
Congratulations.
He's trying to block it.
Or we could ship that to his house. His wife.
It's over, we promise.
Thank you, President Denzini. That was all of the communications I had.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything from the clerk to the board?
I do not have anything, however, Director Penn has just sent a message that he's on the Zoom call and that he loves the Brian poster.
He won't miss it. He can't vote, but he won't miss the meeting. That's good for him. Board of Directors, any reports from the Board of Directors?
I'll make a quick one. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend the Ag in the Classroom annual Farm Day and take in a wonderful joint presentation with EID staff and the El Dorado Water Agency. Countless children from all over the community took in multiple presentations, but they seemed particularly interested and excited at the Water District's presentation. So very, very wonderfully done.
Okay. Director Day. I too, I wasn't able to go to the event that Chuck went to. However, I did go through the town center, or at least the downtown area of Placerville for the Fire Awareness Festival, and it was really pleasing to see our staff there providing the information regarding EID and all of the other tables. Actually, I saw Dan walking down the street when I was leaving. But it was just happened to be one of those things that I said, oh, I saw it on social media. So, and I didn't know it was going on at that time. And I told Chris, who was in the car, my husband, I said, we're going. And he said, okay, let's go. And we just happened to be going through Placerville at that time. So I caught it. And this is where I'm leading up to. Our social media is doing an awesome job. Spending that information and spinning it out into the correct directions on what our staff is doing. And I get a lot of good reports from other people because they see it and I repost it. But I think it's beneficial for us, and I really appreciate your efforts and the good reports that staff is doing. So thank you, Leslie. And thank you, Maria, because I know you're a part of it. Thank you very much. So we're going to move on to approving consent calendars. Board, what is your need?
I'd like to, before we approve the consent calendar, pull number 2 for separate consideration.
Okay.
I have a contract, my company has a contract with Matt Veerkamp Vineyards to provide custom farming services. And although the businesses are separate and distinct, Doug Veerkamp Contracting and Matt Veerkamp Vineyards shares common ownership. So I'll be recusing from that item.
Just a quick statement. I spent 2 hours doing my ethics and FPPC training the last week. I don't know if the rest of the board has done it, but that would not be a conflict. So I did pass the test.
I'd like to move the consent calendar absent item 2.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right.
We are now taking public comment on the approval of the consent calendar minus item 2. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding the approval of the consent calendar, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding approval of the consent calendar, please refer to the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of the consent calendar. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes.
We have a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended, minus item number 2, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. We're ready for the vote. All right, motion passes.
Right. We will move on to.
Director Anzini, I'm sorry. Sorry, I should have said this prior to the vote on the consent calendar, but I would like the records to reflect that Director Mansfield has participated in the vote on consent item number 4. This is the ratification of the ongoing emergency for the Reservoir 1 floating cover emergency. Director Mansfield's participation in this vote is legally required under the Political Reform Act Regulation Section 18705, and therefore he has not recused. I will just like to add, kind of along the lines of what you indicated earlier, that Director Mansfield does not have a direct conflict of interest, but out of precaution, he has continuously recused himself from this item because of the association that he previously referred to with regard to consent item number 2. Having said that, the Political Reform Act makes a clear exception, even when there is a conflict of interest, for a member of the legislative body to participate in the decision if their participation is legally required, as is the case today in light of the need to have a supermajority approve this ratification, and in the absence of Director Penn, Director Mansfield's participation was required. So just wanted the meeting minutes to reflect that. Thank you.
Okay. Now, we need to vote on number 2.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Move consent item 2.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Item number 2 has been,
Yes, we
Voted
are
on.
now taking public comment on consent calendar item 2. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding the approval of this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding approval of this item, please follow the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Andini, does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of consent item 2. Would you like me to call for the vote?
yes.
Okay. We have a motion to ratify the warrant registers and employee expense reimbursements for the periods ending April 21st and April 28th, 2026, and the automated clearinghouse ACH payments for the periods ending April 15th and April 22nd, 2026, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. Director Mansfield has recused himself from this item and will not be voting. We are now ready for the vote.
Board members vote.
Okay? Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to information item. Item number 7 is finance.
Good morning, President and members of the board. My name is Madison Franklin. I am the district's finance manager, and I'm here today to present the first quarter financial update ending March 31st, 2026. Previous board action. Every quarter, the board receives and files a financial update which compares budget to actuals from January 1st through the end of the associated quarter. On December 8th, 2025, the board adopted the 25 through 26 mid-cycle operating budget, 2026 capital improvement plan, or CIP budget, and the 2026 through 2030 financial plan. As of March 31st, 2026, the district has recorded $34.3 million in revenue, $15.2 million in operating expenses, and $8.3 million in capital improvement plan project expenses. This table presents actual revenues by category as of March 31st compared to 3 months of the annual budgeted amounts. It includes prior year actuals for the same period. Revenue performance for the first quarter is consistent with budgetary expectations. Revenues derived from water, wastewater, and recycled water sales exceed those recorded in the prior year, primarily due to board-approved rate increases. Total revenues for the quarter are approximately $2.9 million above budget. This positive variance is largely attributable to development-related activity occurring earlier in the calendar year than anticipated. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, reimbursements are approximately $1.8 million lower than amounts recorded during the same period in the prior year. This decrease reflects the completion of collections on outstanding FEMA claims associated with the 2021 and 2023 storm events, as well as the absence of new emergency incidents eligible for reimbursement during the current period. Overall, revenues are tracking as anticipated through the first quarter, with favorable variances driven by the timing of development activity and expected reductions in FEMA reimbursements relative to the prior year. This table shows expenses by category and includes comparisons to expenditures incurred during the first 3 months of the annual budget period, as well as prior year actuals for the same time frame to facilitate year-over-year analysis. For the first quarter, the district incurred operating expenses of $15.2 million against an annual operating budget of $76.7 million. This represents approximately 20% of the total annual budget. Expenditures for the first quarter are consistent with budgetary expectations and indicate that spending is progressing in line with the planned allocations, except for savings in wages and benefits due to vacancies. Year-to-date expenditures as of March 31st, 2026 are approximately $3.2 million higher than those recorded during the same period in the prior year. This increase is consistent with projections established during the budget development process. The district's total annual operating expense budget increased $5.4 million from 2025 to 2026, which accounts for the higher level of expenditures observed in the current year. Overall, operating expenses are tracking as anticipated through the first quarter, with no material deviations from the approved budget. This table presents employee benefit costs for the quarter ending March 31st compared to the associated 3-month budget, along with prior year results. Employee benefit expenses are tracking in line with expectations for the first 3 months of 2026. As shown in the table, the percentage of budget spent for the first quarter of both 2025 and 2026 was 77%, indicating consistent year-over-year spending trends compared to budget. It's not clicking. Doing it wrong. Oh no, clicked too far now. Slight delay. Capital improvement plans, so the next slide. We don't like this one. Great, thank you. This table shows actual capital improvement plan expenditures as of March 31st, 2026, compared to its budgeted cash flow for the 2026 year. This was included in the 5-year financial plan. Expenditures are currently tracking in line with expectations and are anticipated to meet the annual budget by year end. Historically, over the last 10 years, first quarter expenditures have averaged approximately 18% of the total annual CIP expenditures. As of the first quarter of 2026, expenditures are at 15% of the budgeted cash flow. Since the district is still early in the fiscal year and the first quarter has historically represented the lowest percentage of actuals during the year, expenditures are still expected to align with the approved budget by year end. Future financial updates. We are planning to have the ACFR to the board for the June 22nd meeting, the second quarter financial update in August, and the 5-year financial plan will be updated in October 2026 for the 2027 through 2028 budget workshop, then brought back to the board for adoption in November. Board options. This is an informational item only, and no board action is required. Is there any questions?
Nope. No. Any questions? Anybody from the audience?
We are now taking public comment on information item number 7. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment on this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment on this item, please follow the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on this item. We're ready to move to the next information item.
Okay. This is an information item on operations. Good morning.
Good morning. Madam President, members of Madam President, members of the board, General Manager Van Diar, good morning. My name is Emily Bertram, Parks and Recreation Manager, and I am here to provide an information item, an update about boating restrictions at Sly Park Recreation Area. This will be an update to the information item that I presented in April of 2025 regarding the golden mussels news items that you may have been seeing around town, as it were. So as we've discussed previously, invasive mussels do pose a severe threat to water infrastructure, mostly in the rapid colonization and clogging of our physical systems. We don't have any invasive mussels in any of the facilities at El Dorado Irrigation District, and we intend to keep it that way. Prevention is the goal, water quality being our #1 priority. So again, in review, invasive mussels, there are 3 different types now. Quagga and zebra having been known since the early mid-2000s, and golden mussel coming just in late 2024, non-native species introduced into our ecosystems. We recognize this map from a year ago. These were the first detections in fall of 2024. Port of Stockton was probably the anticipated landing zone, and as of early February 2025, that was the distribution. Do I, or does the clicker? Oh, no, we're stuck. Okay, but it doesn't show it there. Man, and I have a good little witty repartee for the next slide. Yeah. Things have happened since then. I'd love to show you. Oh, good. Well, just stare at me. Oh, yes. I don't need a wider angle. I need a narrower angle. Yeah, this is the most dramatic pause you're probably ever going to hear from me in one of these presentations. Mm-hmm. Monday mornings.
Apologies while we reconnect to the presentation.
the classic IT question of, have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Okay, let's catch up. What did the baby tomato say to or the daddy tomato say to the baby tomato? Catch up. Okay, whoop, all righty, now. Okay, so April 2026, this is now the detection map that CDFW is showing. So as you can see from this, as the water flows, so the mussel goes. It has, see? It was too long between the pause and the witty repartee. So as you can see, it has pretty quickly followed down the water delivery system into Southern California. Yeah, all the way. A quick refresher of the life cycle of an invasive mussel, probably a regular mussel too, but they can produce female mussels can produce 1 million eggs a year. And these little larvae, known as veligers, will float in the water column for weeks at a time before settling out somewhere and then attaching with those byssal threads. And once they're attached with those byssal threads, they're undislodgeable without significant effort. Threats, as we've discussed, is basically the main concern here is the clogging of the infrastructure. You can see the pictures on the left and the right show just how quickly those colonizations can disrupt the flow of water. And then there's also recreational threats of, damaging recreational equipment, boats, etc. And then the other main part for reservoirs, living reservoirs such as Sly Park, are the disruption to the ecosystem by altering the food webs. They're a filter feeder, these mussels, and they can clean the water of all of that microscopic food that other animals and invertebrates use. They can clean liters and liters a day, each mussel, which can really kind of collapse a food web pretty quickly. We have always been at very low risk for establishment of quagga and zebra due to the water chemistry and water features that our reservoirs, contain. But the concern now is that the risk of establishment for golden mussels is a little bit unknown. They may be able to establish in waters that have those somewhat lower calcium levels. So that's why we're operating with a high level of risk-averse water management at this point. Pathway for spread for us really is going to be those recreational watercraft. We're not taking water in a water delivery system in the same way, as going down the California aqueduct, but our recreational, boating is the main concern here. So last year, as the board remembers, we did implement some boat tagging, boat launching restrictions at Sly Park Recreation Area, including these boat tagging efforts to protect the district's infrastructure and primary water supply, being Jenkinson. And that involved applying the seals that effectively locked a boat to its trailer and prevented launching at other facilities, or at least launching that we didn't know about at other facilities. And we continued that effort today. These are some visitation numbers and some revenue numbers from the last year after the launch restrictions were implemented. Day use did increase. Even with the decrease in boating, our day use did increase. That's a pretty typical number. 10 to 15% year over year is our day use increase. But you can see pretty substantial decreases in the boat day use numbers, a third down. And then 16% down on folks buying annual passes that are boat specific. But if you'll notice, the non-motorized boat use increased by almost the same amount that the motorized boating decreased, which was kind of an interesting thing to us. And anecdotally, we certainly heard that from our non-motorized boaters, that they really enjoyed kayaking or stand-up paddleboarding with a slightly, a decreased number of motorized boats on the lake. And what we anticipate is that it was a decrease in out-of-the-area boaters, folks who might have otherwise camped with their boat and didn't want to come or weren't able to come and perform the quarantine procedure at the lake, or even folks who people really kind of needed to pick a lake last season. And so, they might have decided that they didn't want to operate under any launch restrictions and they were going to Ice House or Union Valley, or they preferred Folsom, or they just sort of adopted a wait and see, and maybe they came back later in the year, but we didn't see them as much in the beginning of the year. So for this spring, these are the changes that we have implemented. Primarily, this offers a path for the out-of-town boaters to obtain a quarantine at a closer water body so that they might be able to bring their boat camping as long as they're able to meet these criteria. We typically try to keep fewer words on a slide, but there are a lot of criteria in order to continue providing for the most water quality concerns that we can keep a hold of what we can keep a hold of. We have a pretty long series of criteria that these boaters are going to need to meet. And this is going to hopefully allow us to increase boating without increasing our risk. So they have to be able to, they get that quarantine tag at a water body that is negative for any known mussels. We have to be able to verify that that tag was applied at that water body. That boat needs to remain out of the water for 30 days or more, so effectively another quarantine period. And we have to be able to check in that watercraft database, see the tag, verify that the tag is untampered, and then we would allow for launching at that time.
I have a question or two.
Yes.
How reciprocal will this sort of criteria be? So, for instance, somebody has the tag from Folsom Lake, and so if I'm understanding it correctly, so that tag that they get, so maybe they go to Folsom Lake this spring, they would then they get tagged when they leave the lake. They would have to be out for 30 days, dry for 30 days?
Sir, yes.
Okay, and so if that tag was 2 weeks old, it'd be not acceptable.
That's correct.
Okay, and if they come up and get a tag, then when they leave us, they're going to get our tag when they leave.
Yes.
What's the situation if they want to go back to Folsom? Is it reciprocated or?
Yes. So in most of the neighboring water agencies, so Folsom, Berryessa, Nevada Irrigation District, they're all have begun this spring as well to operate in a similar way. So that they'll take a tag from another negative water body that's been out of the water for 30 plus days and allow them to launch and apply their own tag upon exit.
My suspicion would be this might be of benefit to our campers,
Yes.
but most people are not going to want to stop in the middle of summer and have their boat or sea-doo dry for 30 days in, middle of July or whatever. So it would be interesting to see the follow-up
Yeah.
on that.
Yes.
Another one, while I'm thinking about it, we had asked, I think we only had one certified decontamination facility, and they were in Tahoe, I believe.
Correct.
Are we accepting from other decontamination facilities, or is it still just Tahoe?
Currently, we are not, because we are still, and I will get into that a little bit later on in the presentation, but we are still waiting for CDFW or another analogous agency to develop a program of certification of those decontamination, particularly third-party, non-agency decontamination facilities. We're really hoping that a state agency will step forward and develop a certification program so that we can have some confidence that those particularly for-profit non-agency decontamination stations are providing a decontaminated boat at the end of each
Right.
time that a boater goes through the process.
Thank you.
Yes. So for those who like a flow chart, here we are. visual representation of the slide that I just covered, which is kind of the various ways that you can end up being able to launch at Slide Park Recreation Area. You get a quarantine tag, you get an exit tag from us, come back to the lake, you have your tag removed at another water body, you wait the 30 days, you come on back to Slide Park. So cables and silver, this is a pretty common question. We also operate boat launch facilities at both of these lakes. The water conditions, as we understand it now, are far less conducive to the establishment of golden mussels. Therefore, we currently do not have, nor do we intend to change the boat launching at Silver or Caples lakes. So if they do launch up there, unfortunately, they do need to go through another 30-day quarantine process. And so we'll continue to evaluate as goes forward. More news, more information comes out. Things may change, but we're primarily focusing on outreach and education up there. So the camp host who works at both of the camp hosts who work at both of those boat launches receive the same education as the staff that works at Slide Park. They're able to provide information to boaters upon request or just whenever they can flag somebody down and do a little, on-the-spot education. Myself and a variety of other staff here at EID continue to participate in agency coordination and water manager meetings pretty consistently. I feel like I'm at least in one a week, it seems like generally. And there's also some legislative action starting to take place. So I have been and other staff have been participating in meetings with the aides for the legislator who is developing a bill. AB 1772 is what's currently moving around and discussing, what the differences between prevention and control, because certainly that is, there's a pretty big dividing line there, and we want to stay on the side of prevention rather than control, certainly, and trying to advocate for that being as equal of an information point as the control portion, because certainly it's much more cost effective to stay on prevention than to get into control. There's also going to be some research taking place, and so we'll be working with some other stakeholders on that. I think actually I have a different slide on there. Public outreach and education continues to be, primarily the staff at the entrance station at Slide Park talking to every boater and every non-motorized boater who comes through those gates, touching base with them, providing that education should they not have it, looking at those non-motorized boats, making sure that they're clean, drained, and dry, and, getting those boats tagged, making sure that items are being entered into the database and that we're really doing our due diligence with the boaters in our community. We also update, thanks again to Leslie, the district website, and we do various social media postings as changes are made. We have had for years an invasive mussel monitoring and prevention plan. In 2025, it was updated to include the golden mussels, and there's also monitoring going on seasonally at various water bodies. Again, I mentioned research activities. There's a lack of current and local research having to do with golden mussels, and so we are partnering with a variety of other stakeholders, including East Bay Mud, Roseville, Placer County Water Agency, to test how golden mussels respond to the specific water chemistry characteristics in Folsom, that being a shared water body with all of those stakeholders. So we're participating this season with that research, and we'll hopefully have some results probably early next year, knowing how long it can take some scientific stuff to happen. And so the primary points will be how conducive the local waters are to survival, and then also reproductive success, because those can be two different ideas. So new developments, I'm sure everyone has heard the news. that the California Department of Water Resources did discontinue inspections, decontamination, and seal checking at Oroville a couple of weeks ago.
Why is that? I hadn't heard that.
Oh, okay. So, there is a study from, the study was conducted in 2017, published in 2016 and published in 17 from Ottawa, Canada, about golden mussels in the Great Lakes. The California DWR is taking that study and have made some decisions that for their purposes, that study is sufficient to, that they're going to discontinue their efforts at Oroville.
They think, based off that study, they think their water conditions or chemistry are not conducive, then that's their conclusion.
That is their conclusion, yes. Reading the news item, I'm not sure that they even think that it's not conducive to some mussels. Reading their news item, it sounds like they actually anticipate having some golden mussel infestation of some kinds. Their idea is that that will be a surface level contamination and that their water infrastructure is not going to be susceptible to damage.
Well, okay, a living experiment, so.
EID's staff focus remains protecting EID's water system and supply. So we're going to continue to monitor, as you say, kind of a current living experiment, continue to monitor what goes on and that research. And then, as I've mentioned a couple of times, prevention is the most cost-effective measure that we have, and we will continue to implement our prevention measures the strongest that we have possible. Funding. So it's cost about $100,000 to implement the program last year, and about 85% of that had to do with staffing. Historically, the entrance station has not been staffed in the off-season. We now do staff that entrance 7 days a week in order to capture any boaters that are coming in the non-summer season. We lock gates at night in order to prevent any unauthorized access when that building is unstaffed. And so, yeah, a large proportion of the cost does go to staffing. And we'll continue to evaluate all of those costs. Currently, we had not, originally we had not developed a cost structure for boaters. I think it was, everybody was kind of on the wait and see mode. How is this going to shake out? But now we'll need to be, looking at adjusting those launching fees, because I don't think anyone anticipates that launch restrictions are going to be going away anytime soon. So we'll be looking to change those to ensure those program costs are borne by the boating community and not by just recreations fund in general. And we continue to seek out funding opportunities. The funding opportunities that have come to light, the grants, they have not been focused on staffing. And so we've been unsuccessful in obtaining a grant as to date, but we'll continue applying as different grants come to light. I would anticipate there will be larger funding activities as this has become more of a hot button issue. And then, as always, our favorite beauty shot of the lake. Any questions, comments, concerns?
I don't see any board members? No?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much. Oh, not take the remote.
And this was an information item.
Oh, sorry. Yes, so as this was an information item, there is no action for the board to be taken at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We are now taking public comment on information item 8. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment on this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment on this item, please follow the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on this item. We are ready to move on to action items.
Yes, thank you. We will start with item number 9. You have to pull that microphone up towards you.
A little higher. Morning, everyone. My name's Greg Royal. I'm the Fleet and Building Maintenance Supervisor. Does this work? Okay, I'm here to present on our 2026 Vehicle Replacement Program CIP. Previous board actions, June 23rd, 2025, board awarded for our 2025 CIP. We got approved for that. November 10th, board adopted our capital improvement plan. December 8th, board adopted our 25-26 mid-cycle operating budget. Summary issues. We have quite a few vehicles nearing end of service life. A lot of them in this package here, you'll see are still pretty old. We've done quite a good job in the last 4 years doing a huge cycle out. So we're just kind of getting the remainder of those, the really old ones that are well over our set in expectancy life. Right now, the district is we're seeking 2 CARB exemptions for 2 of the vehicles in this package. I'll speak to those a lot more down further into the presentation. Like I said, replacing some of these vehicles just help keep a clean, safe, reliable fleet for all of our operators, as well as safety out on the road.
Great. I know last year and the year before, but last year I think was a big lump that we approved of replacement vehicles. This is a little smaller lump, but still. And I think you've taken an aggressive approach to looking at vehicle replacement and trying to put things back on track. Do you anticipate future years' vehicle replacement being reduced now that we played catch-up?
Yes, we did the large purchases to try to get us caught up. So these are kind of just smaller packages where we're trying to dwindle down to where we're on that nice even plane every year. So we've done a very good job in the last few years of rotating vehicles around. We put them in where they do a lot of mileages, and then we'll pull them 3 or 4 years and put them where they won't do a ton. That way we can filter the vehicles, get as much time out of them as we can, saving money across the board to where we're not just racking up miles on the same trucks, replacing the same ones. It's a massive chess match for 200 vehicles in the district. We do a massive rotation every year. Even with these, if we buy 9 vehicles, we might be moving 15 vehicles around in the district just to better serve and last as long as they possibly can.
Thanks.
So, yep. Just a quick picture. This is what happens. By the time we're climbing into the engine bay, it usually costs the district quite a bit of money. So filtering out these older vehicles and getting on that good.
Horsepower is he.
Yeah, getting these vehicles out before we have to do the very expensive engine repairs, transmission repairs. That's our ultimate goal, is getting on that great cycle to where we're not spending a bunch of money into these trucks just to get rid of them in a couple years after that. So we're really just trying to push up that timelines and get a better return on our vehicles.
Question for you. Did I see, what do you do with these cars, with these vehicles?
For the old ones?
Yeah,
These ones go straight to the auction.
they go into auction.
Yep,
Okay,
yeah.
great.
So we everything we do, we send everything to auction, get a return back.
Okay.
So that's our big thing, is trying to get on that good cycle to where we can get a little bit more out of them, to where they're not completely dead by the time we're shipping them off. If we get on that great cycle, then it'll be very cost efficient
Okay.
for us.
Thank you.
Like I said, we have over 700 pieces of equipment in the district, from weed eaters all the way up to our large generators. Right now, we're at about 200 district vehicles. So it's a big chess match, filtering vehicles around and making sure that the vehicles that are getting the most mileages are getting rotated out earlier and then filtered around to plants or places that they're not driving a ton of miles to live out the rest of their lives there. We do all of our servicing in-house as much as we possibly can. So all of our inspections, our CHP inspections, bit inspections, Our smog checks are now clean fleet tests that we are having to perform 3 times a year now on our bigger trucks. We do everything in-house now, and that allows us to not have all the vehicle downtimes or scheduling, inspections other places. We can just do them as we're doing our basic services. We talked about the replacement criteria. We bumped our numbers up to where we're not running these vehicles as long as we were. And this will ultimately help us with the cost, the less downtime, those really expensive repairs that we really want to avoid. Here's a quick list of the vehicles that we are getting ready to replace. As you can see on here, these are over all of our criterias. We have over 20 years. You can see on there that we got over 230,000 miles on certain ones. And we got a couple pieces of equipment that are quite old as well. And then our vac on there, that is one of our combo trucks that I'll show you here in a second. And you'll see why, even with it being a newer truck, it is still well over its life cycle. Because with these trucks, with all the moving parts and what they're built to do, they don't have a 20-year life. They're recommended for 10 years. And we're well over that with this truck as well.
What makes the Kawasaki Mule unrepairable?
Transmission. The transmission's bad, and you cannot buy them for this year anymore. You can search in used vehicles, but yeah, it's just
An old Shasta can.
even the 2003 trucks, we're struggling to get parts for them.
Yeah.
Manufacturers are kind of pushing that, where they're just discontinuing everything to make it a little bit harder to where people are forced to move to newer. So these trucks, this one here, over 230,000 miles, you can see the paint's falling off, and it's just, it did its job and it did it well, but it's time. So here's our Vector. As I mentioned before, this is one of the trucks we are seeking the CARB exemption for. We have a total of 5 Vectors in the district right now. 2 of them are in our water side, and then 3 are in our collection side. These are our lifelines for out there. These are our emergencies, all of our maintenance. These are the game changers that, these are best things that we could have ever gotten. And so, same thing. This is our the last one out of them. We've replaced the 2 collection ones already in the previous years, and this one's our oldest one here. It's also our biggest truck that we currently run. It has the biggest pull power, so they use this thing every day. It's their lifeline out there in the field. This one, like I said, we are seeking the exemption for. When you reach out to any of the different different manufacturers, obviously none of them make an electric version of this. So this is a pretty easy way to just send all the proof and get the exemption going. So we're seeking that right now. Here's some trucks from DuPrat Ford. These are just our Ford trucks. We have 7 F-150s, 1 Ford Explorer, and 1 F-350 pickup. The F-350 pickup truck is the other truck that we're seeking the exemption on. That one we're going to go to the with the exemption. We go off the fact that it is a 4-wheel drive vehicle, has winch recovery, toolboxes, racking, and has to be able to tow. So that's some of the criteria in the exemption that we push when we do the exemption itself. These vehicles here, we actually went by negotiation. When we go to look for the pricings for this, we check into all the different vendors to see what kind of timelines they are, as well as pricing. We pull from Sourcewell contract holders, as well as state contract pricing. And so we pull from all these places to see what the best deal we can get, as well as who can actually produce the vehicles in a timely manner. And even this year, Ford was cutting their order banks very early this year because of just like a few years ago where we were hitting those, where they're shutting all the banks very quickly because of demand and how much they can produce in that amount of time. So we ended up negotiating. Duprat Ford came in and they wanted our business, so they came in and they beat everybody's pricing. All the contract holders, everybody, they said we'll beat their pricing if you buy from us. So that's ultimately why we were going with Duprat Ford.
How long is it taking to get the exemptions typically?
Last year took all year long, but I'm getting really good at it. So this year should be way less.
Okay.
So there's a lot of going back and forth. The biggest thing was getting the information they want, because you'll submit it and then it'll take 40 days before they'll respond and ask for one little thing.
Right.
So then you got to go and get 5 different people to say the same exact thing to give back to them, and wait another 30 or 40 days. And so going through that, that's what took the longest. Now we have everything in place. We have all the letters, we have all the reasonings. So now it's a pretty easy package. It's just you have to wait on them to respond.
Okay.
Yep.
Did I understand you to say that Duprat Ford actually is beating the state contract price?
Yeah. Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
Good
They
job.
came in, they went through, and they said they'll do that, which then also gives us a way closer delivery times. The Ford contract pricing is always the last of the builds for the year. So you get them very late compared to them. They push them through, they do their stock orders, and you get them months and months in advance compared to state contract.
Good job.
Here's the Vector truck here. This one, this is a big truck, big deal. So we actually started at the beginning of the year pushing out to do vendor demos. So we had our actual staff out demoing all the different types of trucks to see which ones they like. They tried them all out. We did all the specs that we would need, and then we sent it out to each and every one of those vendors to do the pricing. And Owen came in lower than everybody else, which actually works out good because it's the same truck that we've currently purchased across the board. So by purchasing this, every single one of our trucks, all the operating systems, all the parts, all the manuals, everything is basically the same across the board. So operators as well as mechanics, all of us, it'll help out a lot by just bringing that last one up to the same specs as the others. So. Here's the Kawasaki mules. These ones, basically, we took a bunch of different dealers around here. We spec'd out all the same type. We tried out different manufacturers between Kawasaki, between Honda, and we spec'd them all out. We had all of them do price quotes for each one, and ultimately PCP Motorsports had the best deal around us. And so we're looking to purchase the 2 mules from them.
I think the board of directors should be trained on those for safety
It'd be
reasons.
nice. You guys definitely need a field trip out there.
Yeah.
On the blues. They might have you do some concrete work though.
Hard hats necessary.
Board options. Award contract to Duprat Auburn Ford, Inc. in the not to exceed amount of $444,230.24 for the purchase of 9 replacement vehicles. Owen Equipment in the not to exceed amount of $778,148.09 for 1 sewer combination truck. And PCP Motorsports in the not to exceed amount of $37,025.80 for the replacement of 2 pieces of equipment for the 2026 vehicle replacement program, project number 26003.01. Option 2, take other action as directed by the board. Option 3, take no action.
I'll move option 1.
I'll second that.
Okay. We have
Great. We're now taking public comment on the approval of action item 9. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding the approval of this item, please refer to the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. Director Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of action item 9. Would you like me to call for the vote?
yes.
Okay. We have a motion to award contracts to Duprat Ford Auburn Inc., in the not-to-exceed amount of $444,230.24 for the purchase of 9 replacement vehicles. Owen Equipment in the not-to-exceed amount of $778,148.09 for the replacement of 1 sewer combination truck. And PCP Motorsports in the not-to-exceed amount of $37,025.80 for the replacement of 2 pieces of equipment for the 2026 Vehicle Replacement Program, project number 26003.01, moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Day. We are ready for the vote.
Yes. Board members vote?
Okay, motion carries.
Thank you,
very
thank you.
much.
Go off and ride your Kawasaki's. We'll move on to, let's see, number 10. Mr. Goldman.
Right. Good morning, Board. Daniel Goldman, Senior Civil Engineer here at the district. I'm here today to talk about the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project, which I'm transitioning into with the retirement of John Kessler. Specifically, we're going to talk about a design contract amendment request. So I'll move quickly through previous board actions. 2021, there was some initial funding authorized for preliminary level evaluations, followed by some more significant design contracts through 2022, including the $1.5 million contract to GEI for the primary design effort. Moving into 2024, we had just under $1 million authorized for the California Division of Safety of Dams application fee, which also covers their review of the documents, which we'll get into a little bit later on. Additionally, there was a 2024 contract amendment awarded to GEI at the 30% level, which we'll touch on as well, followed by the capital improvement plan adoption in 2025 with the other financial and budgeting items. So a summary of the issue here, the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project is currently in the design phase, and that design is required to be submitted to the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, and the California Division of Safety of Dams, or DSOD, for review throughout the process. We received very delayed and extensive comments from FERC and DSOD review on the last round of review with the project, which resulted in an extension in the project schedule, as well as an expansion of design scope, which we'll get into that in a few slides here.
Can I ask a question? How delayed was that, or how long did it take?
It took a year, which we'll get into.
Okay, all right.
So in short, what we're asking for here is a contract amendment to GEI to address stakeholder comments and complete the design. So, a little more detail on what I was just discussing. So at the 60% design level, the design was submitted to FERC and DSOD, and that was in October of 2024. We received DSOD comments in July of 2025, and then we received FERC comments in October of 2025, so that's a full 12 months. As I mentioned, the comments were extensive, and it was recognized immediately that it did represent a significant increase in the scope of services, and we'll go through the technical details of the comments here in a few slides. So at the time, district staff had directed GEI to proceed with addressing comments as they were received from FERC and DSOD throughout late 2025 and early 2026. And of course, I was ahead of this amendment today. So that was to keep the project moving along. So next couple of slides, we have some project status reminders here. It's been a little while since this has been to the board. So some completed project tasks and some milestones. The foundation and lake bed cofferdam conditions have been analyzed, so that'll help us as we move into construction and temporarily lowering the water level of the lake and installing temporary infrastructure. We've completed a geotechnical report, and we have progressed the design and technical specifications through the 30% and 60% phases, all the way to the draft 100% stage where they are now. And again, there was FERC and DSOD review at 30% and at 60%. Additionally, the draft environmental impact report is in the works, and we've had significant outreach and coordination with Amador County Board of Supervisors, Project 184 Ecological Resources Committee, as well as the Forest Service and Caltrans. So a bit of a visual representation of the project here. This is a rendering from the draft 100% package. At the top of the screen there, you're looking at the downstream face of the dam, and at the bottom, you're looking at the upstream face of the dam. A few key features. We've got the operator house in the center, referencing the top figure, along with the valve house off to the right, and then some of our low flow and auxiliary outlet structures are also pictured there, although the labels are a little small for the screen, but just to give you an idea. And then one of the main visual components that's easy to recognize here is that labyrinth structure at the crest of the dam there, where the spillway is. So now we'll get into the contributing factors to the design contract amendment. So we'll start with the DSOD 60% comments. First, we had the requirement imposed to batter all concrete backfilled faces. To put this simply, all of the vertical concrete faces that are going to receive backfill during the construction project, DSOD required that we make those sloped. So that's a pretty significant change in the design. It required a lot of civil and structural drawings to be reworked and the analysis of several structures for updated geometry and structural calculations.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Isn't that similar to what happened at Forbay?
I'm not super familiar with Forbay, with the project there, but
Yeah, when we were in the middle of redoing that, I think that's might have happened.
Could GEI have anticipated this request? Should they have?
not to my knowledge. Again, we're kind of in a transition period, so I'm still working through everything. But from what I've been able to gather, all of the requests in the amendment are legitimate.
Okay.
So next item here is the introduction of more complex requirements for construction flood development. So this was just an ask for, or not an ask, a requirement for additional analysis to look at potential flood conditions during construction that were not considered earlier in the project. And then the final DSOD comment here, requirement to perform additional stability analysis for temporary cut slopes. Again, this was just a requirement to take analysis of temporary construction slopes to a level that was not accounted for at the beginning of the project.
Daniel, weren't they involved from the beginning?
They were. So
It's kind of like these are surprises.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. It's a good question. So they were involved at the beginning. They were involved at 30%. The comments at 30% were substantial as well. And we're here at 60%, trying to satisfy these requirements again. We are hopeful that the draft 100% will be more well taken, for lack of a better way to put it.
Were the changes due to change in staffing on their end, or what do you think drove these, quote, new requirements?
Yeah, I'll let John jump in and speak to that.
Good morning, John Money, Director of Engineering for the department. Unfortunately, Daniel and I neither one of us participated in these meetings, but what we have done is we did do a comprehensive assessment, which I believe was about 2 to 3 weeks of meeting on site with GEI, FERC, John Kessler, and an independent review of the dam. And so throughout those workshops, basically their job is to identify any way the dam can possibly fail. And throughout those assessments, they continue to layer on additional safety factors. It's one of the challenges of working with FERC and with these high-risk structures is basically when you open this up or our license modifications, you basically open the door and say, what do you want? Instead of having I think GEI has proceeded throughout this design as being conservative and doing best management practices. However, when you just open the doors and you have to consider everything, you layer on those additional safety factors. And we really, once those are agreed to, we have to go back and redesign and incorporate those into the process. So we don't really have any leverage. We don't, because it's it's a workshop. So there's in those comprehensive assessments, we really have 4 people or 4 parties. It's the district, our design engineer, FERC, and an independent facilitator. In that case, it was KGS. that is kind of the facilitator and moderator on that from a standalone. And those comprehensive assessments, again, those are some of the fallout from the Oroville Dam. So we just completed that assessment with Forbay as well. Even though we just designed and just rebuilt that, we went through the full comprehensive assessment this last year, which is, again, opening the door of like any way this dam can possibly fail, we're starting over. And that's going to be an ongoing process for all of our FERC dams moving forward I want to say every 5 years. So they're going to be on a rotating basis. So it's a real challenge. It's probably a little bit overkill, but again, it's that readjustment of risk threshold following the Oroville Dam.
If I could add really quickly, our experience is consistent with what I hear from other agencies who deal with FERC and DSOD on their dams. And it is something that we all struggle with because your planning goes way off in terms of not being anywhere near, because you don't know everything that's going to come out. I think this is definitely an area where regulatory overhaul would be appreciated from an agency perspective. However, there is no sign that anything like that is going to happen anytime soon.
And just to clarify, so it's not that they can propose anything and we take those recommendations. There has been significant pushback and what is reasonable. So it's a balancing act of meeting every possible failure mechanism versus what we think are likely or have some chance of happening in the future. And so we do push back and narrow those down, but to some extent, you can only do so much, and then you have to engage in these additional mitigation measures.
John, are those risk factors or failure points opinions or science-based?
I believe that they are a combination of the two. Again, when you get multiple parties in the room, everybody has an opinion. It's everybody's job again to vet those opinions, and it's really in the interest of this is a facility that cannot fail. We can't have another Oroville throughout the state, and so this is, we design conservatively in engineering. It's more conservative the higher that risk gets, and really the threshold for when you get to dams and safeties is basically it will not fail. And so by the time you get to that level of safety, there's a lot of extras that are incorporated into the project.
That has a big cost factor with it, though, doesn't it, for our ratepayers to build the infallible dam, unfailable, I guess is.
Right.
Before you leave the podium, we had to do some shifting of funds to keep this design on track. $190,000 that we, should I say, borrowed from someplace. Can you speak to that?
I think Daniel is going to get into that, but
Okay,
we
sorry.
have not shifted funds.
It's more fun to pick on you.
Yeah, exactly. Put me on the spot, but we have not shifted funds to date. So I believe that all the changes that Daniel is going to be asking today are within the project budget and contingency.
We just took it from other tasks.
What we've done and we strive not to do is allow the consultant to proceed without consulting the board, which is what we're here today to do.
Okay, thank you.
All right, perfect. So I'll quickly move through the FERC 60% comments as well. So we have a requirement to update the deterministic seismic hazard analysis, or the DSHA. What's going on here is there were changes to rock scaling factors that were published after the DSHA was completed for the Silver Lake Dam design. So that changed a number of things which required seismic analysis to be repeated for the project. We also have 3 analyses that were required from FERC, including downstream impacts due to non-failure floods, which was not something that was included in the original design. We have the coincident probable maximum flood and low-level outlet discharge, which, as that suggests, is a very uncommon loading case to have a maximum flood event at the same time as a low-level outlet discharge. So that was an analysis that was thrown on our plate as well, and then a stability analysis for dam structure along all lift joints. Final one here is a requirement to perform an erodibility study for the downstream river channel. The reason that was not included originally in the design is the downstream river channel is largely granite, so it was not something that was considered, to be necessary as the project was being planned. So here we have a few other contract amendment contributing factors, although more minor in nature, from the district side of things in our review of those 60% design documents. We have the addition of a separate electrical building for the new dam, which was deemed necessary by our electrical staff for operation and maintenance and ongoing work at the dam up there. The next two are items that were included for the auxiliary outlet pipe infrastructure, including a exclusion barrier, as well as ladder access to the auxiliary outlet structure itself. So those are kind of safety and operation and maintenance items that are necessary for long-term operation of the dam. And we've also requested support from GEI for Caltrans negotiations and right-of-way access, which has become relatively complex for the project. Outside of design-related items, we are also asking GEI for support with grant application to the Department of Water Resources Dam Safety and Climate Resilience Local Assistance Program as a potential grant funding source, which is quite technical in nature to apply for and to make sure you have all your ducks in a row there. And again, all of this has resulted in about a 12-month extension between the FERC and DSOD comment period. So we'll move on to slide here with a summary on the financial side. So the current project balance, is $671,000. We have $30,000 left on our existing design contract with GEI, and the amendment that is proposed is $398,000. The details are in the table here. One thing that is worth noting, the original 2022 contract rates with GEI are being maintained, which may not sound significant, but over the last 4 years, consulting contracting rates have gone up pretty significantly. So this is kind of a good faith gesture from GEI and negotiating with staff. And hey, we want to get this project done, and we want to help you see this design through all of these challenges. So the retroactive portion of this contract amendment, as we mentioned, the FERC and DSOD comments were significant, and our staff did instruct GEI to continue addressing those comments as we were receiving them to keep the design moving throughout late 2025 and early 26. This has resulted in approximately $190,000 deficit in the design document contract task, which is, I believe, what you were referring to there. So yeah, it's the same design contract. We haven't taken money from other projects or things like that. We've just been allocating bid support and other things like that to keep the design moving through the draft 100% phase. So that $190,000 represents the portion of work in the proposed contract amendment that has already been completed by GEI. So looking ahead, as the project transitions into new project management, we'll be performing an internal review of these draft 100% deliverables. Once we're comfortable with them, we will submit them to FERC, DSOD, and there'll be a little bit of input with Caltrans as well. We will address those stakeholder comments, which we will hopefully receive in a timely manner, all while kind of monitoring project costs and looking for potential increased scope from stakeholder comments. Again, however, we're again trying to curb all of that as best we can. So we can progress to a final 100% design, hopefully this year. We'll talk about schedule on the next slide. And while all this is going on, our environmental review process is also happening kind of in tandem. So this tentative project schedule largely does hinge on funding mechanisms. We have Prop 4, we have the Climate Resilience Program that we mentioned earlier. So a lot of that is going to dictate the actual construction schedule. But as far as design goes, we are, again, going to perform our review this month of the 100% deliverables that were submitted. We'll then move to FERC and DSOD for review this summer. We anticipate that turnaround being quicker than the last time around, just given the amount of input they had at 60%.
I was going to ask you how much of that schedule for FERC and DSOD is hopeful versus realistic?
It's optimistic, I'll be honest with you. We don't have a way to really impose, like John said, any timeline on them. We're going to request they help us move this forward in 2026. And, we're trying to forge those relationships and keep this moving. So if all goes as planned, we can wrap up the design by the end of 2026. Grant applications and funding mechanisms, those will be in the works from now, all the way into 2027. And again, the results of those will dictate when construction mobilization occurs. But the dates listed there are, hey, we'll be ready to mobilize fall 2027 if all of the funding mechanisms are in place. But that's more of there's more to come on that. So that brings us to board options here. Option 1, approve a contract amendment to GEI Consultants in the not-to-exceed amount of $398,032 for additional design services, environmental, and grant application support services for the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project, project number 19031.01. Option 2, take other action as directed by the board, or option 3, take no action. Of course, our recommendation here is option 1.
Okay. Board members?
Move option 1.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve item number 10.
We are now taking public comment on the approval of action item 10. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding approval of this item, please refer to the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of action item 10. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to approve a contract amendment to GEI Consultants, Inc. in the not-to-exceed amount of $398,032 for additional design, environmental, and grant application support services for the Silver Lake Dam Replacement Project, project number 19031.01. Moved by Director Dwyer and seconded by Director Mansfield. We're ready for the vote.
Board members, go ahead and vote.
And motion carries.
All right, we'll move to item number 11, Office of the General Counsel.
Good morning, President Anzini and members of the board. Elizabeth Leeper, Senior Deputy General Counsel for the district, and I will be partnering with Dan Corcoran for this presentation. So for your consideration today is the 2026 Temporary Water Transfer Agreement. We listed a couple of the most recent and relevant board items here. So the last time we successfully transferred water was in 2022. In 2024, we did proceed with entering into a purchase and sale agreement. However, conditions ultimately did not allow for the transfer of that water. So summary of the issue, just the district is fortunate enough to have ample water supplies in 2026, and we are always looking for opportunities for water transfers as they provide valuable non-rate revenue to the district. And so we are presenting for your consideration a water purchase and sale agreement with Westlands Water District for a total transfer of up to 5,000 acre feet. And we will emphasize that that is a maximum quantity subject to numerous variables. And we will emphasize this a couple times as well. This water that is proposed for transfer is not necessary to meet our own customer demands in 2026, as well as we also factor in 2027 demands and a potential for a drought year in the subsequent year. So the district has successfully completed water transfers in the past. So in 2015, 2018, 2020, and 2022, we were able to transfer water. All of those transfers, and the similar for this year, involve what we call reservoir reoperation transfers, where we dynamically operate our transfers to essentially enable the transfer water. So this year, we're looking at supplies from Weber, Silver, and Caples as the proposed sources of the transfer for 2026. And to enable this transfer, essentially, we change our operations and essentially increase reliance on Jenkinson Lake storage to meet our customer demands and essentially free up some of the transfer water. And I'm going to now turn it over to Dan Corcoran to provide some additional details on the operational side of this.
All right, thanks, Elizabeth. Dan Corcoran, Operations Director. I'm going to go over a few slides regarding the mechanics of the transfer. Okay, first, we start with what is the district's water supply for the year. I'm happy to say that we're in a normal water supply condition despite being in a dry water year. We're very fortunate that, as Jordan has provided his updates, that our reservoirs have been full and spilling for some time. So we're looking at providing portions of the supplies from by using Jenkinson Lake, portions of the supplies from Weber Reservoir, Silver Lake, and Caples Lake that are not necessary for our customers' demands this year. We're anticipating, as you recall from the last board meeting, the Urban Water Management Plan workshop from Patrick Calvis, that dry year supply is 63,379 acre feet to the acre foot. And our demand over the past 5 years, when you look, is 32 to 38. So in 2021, we were just under 38,000. Then when we have those wet springs, 2023, we were just under 32,000. So as you can see, we use only about half of our supply even in this dry year. Okay, and there are a number of factors or considerations that go into a water transfer. We have those highlighted here. First is our supplies for this year, as I just described, as well as preparing for potentially dry conditions next year. As the board's well aware, Jenkinson Lake being a 2-year supply, we have to ensure that we will have sufficient supplies for our customers, not just this year, but next year before proposing to transfer any water. Where that manifests itself is in the Drought Action Plan, most recently adopted by the board in 2021, and that's the 25,000 acre feet carryover of the full 41,000 of Jenkinson Lake. I'm happy to say that with the tunnel still operating and Jenkinson Lake remains spilling, and probably will for another 2 to 3 weeks. So we feel very comfortable that we'll be north of that. I think, no one bets against Jordan, but I'm thinking the 28 to 29,000 acre feet by the end of the fall. So a very robust storage throughout the summer. There are a number of regulatory requirements, though, that do affect the actual yield of the transfer. Those are our lake level targets or requirements, in-stream flow requirements from our Project 184 reservoirs, as well as certain operation obligations from Weber Reservoir and some bypass flow requirements from Jenkinson Lake. Most notably, the conveyance capacity through the Delta, as Elizabeth had described, was the poison pill in 24. We were positioned, we were ready to go. You had approved an agreement, but unfortunately there wasn't sufficient capacity, and ultimately a transfer was not able to occur in 24. So we were standing at the finish line, but just couldn't get over it. And then the last is important, and we've talked about this before, but refill agreements, refill reservations. We create effectively a hole in Jenkinson Lake, or a greater demand than under baseline conditions by that increased reliance. We cannot backfill that capacity in Jenkinson Lake and or Weber Reservoir until the downstream water users, Bureau of Reclamation, ensures that their water supplies are not impacted. So as part of today's action, we would ask for your authorization to once again finalize that accompanying agreement and several others that would be necessary to effectuate the transfer. And then lastly, we always like to be cognizant of market conditions, and being the first year of a potential drier year, if we were to transfer the maximum potential amount, we would not be able to participate potentially in a future market if next year remains dry, yet we still remain confident in our water supply. There's not a set amount there, but we just like to make sure that we preserve a little bit of capacity in the event that we don't transfer all the water this year, potentially transfer next year at potentially more favorable market conditions, still meeting all of our water supply targets for our customers. Okay, and I won't dive into details I love charts and graphs, so I won't dive into details of this, but generally go over what the proposed transfer after considering all those factors, and it's about 5,000 acre feet up to this year. Those would come from releases from those 3 reservoirs that we described, and as we indicated, we instead leverage the flexibility in our distribution system to have increased reliance from Jacobson Lake Sly Park Water Treatment Plant, and therefore minimize reliance from Forebay Reservoir and Reservoir 1 Water Treatment Plant. But we always like to provide the caveat that the actual transfer quantity depends on a number of conditions that we honestly don't have control over. We've positioned ourselves very well, I believe, by acting diligently over the past several months to get us to this situation, this scenario, this position. But we will see how it goes. Obviously, the last remaining factor that we believe this is largely what we call rinse repeat, a reimplementation of a prior transfer, but it's really that through delta capacity and how those water supply conditions may end up the final water year conditions later this spring. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Elizabeth to talk about the terms of the proposed agreement.
Thank you, Dan. So I'm going to briefly just touch on the primary moving parts of the proposed agreement. So we already touched on the proposed quantity, which is up to 5,000 acre feet. The purchase price is $325 per acre foot. And then importantly, Westlands, who was our proposed transfer partner for the 2024 transaction, they essentially had already made an option payment under that agreement before conditions became unfavorable. And under the terms of that 2024 agreement, that option payment, which was $125,000, essentially was reserved as a credit upon any subsequent transfers. So they essentially had $125,000 on the books. And they were willing to forfeit that credit essentially to present the most favorable terms that they could for the district for this transfer. As we've highlighted, transfers are complex and dynamic, so there are quite a few regulatory approvals and agreements that are necessary. We are going to be seeking approval from the State Water Resources Control Board, and then there are several agreements and approvals with the state and federal operators of the Central Valley Project and State Water Project, essentially associated with moving the transfer water as well as that refill agreement and essentially protecting their interests, given that we are creating a bit of a more room in our storage as a result of the transfer. So those are just some of the terms and conditions we wanted to highlight from the agreement itself. And I don't think it's worth re-emphasizing that we always put our customers first. So even after a careful evaluation of our supply conditions, we also have terms in the proposed agreement that afford those same protections for our customers. So it's very explicit in the agreement that we can reduce or cancel the transfer at any time if there was some kind of, let's say there was an emergency situation or we had a facility go down, we could essentially walk away from the transfer at any time to respond to our customer needs. Of course, we do think that water transfers, when conditions align, are in our customers' interests because they do provide important non-rate revenues that essentially offset some of the pressures that our customers otherwise would experience. And just a note on environmental review. So we are pursuing an agreement at this time. We do have to satisfy the California Environmental Quality Act, which is CEQA. However, CEQA recognizes that sometimes you need to enter into agreements to essentially position yourself to accomplish a project. So it recognizes that you can enter into an agreement that essentially is conditional upon CEQA compliance, and so that is the path we're moving forward with today. So we will subsequently be bringing the CEQA action to the board for consideration, but the agreement itself is conditioned upon that CEQA compliance. So this is
Elizabeth, I had some questions. This might be a good time to bring up. There was in the news that the Citrus Heights Water District is suing their wholesale water supplier, the San Juan Water District. It wasn't totally clear to me what it has to do with CEQA. And I don't know whether it's San Juan's not doing a CEQA, they didn't like the results of the CEQA, but wondered if you guys have seen that, could touch bases on it, how that might potentially affect us. And then also refresh my memory, how did our past CEQAs go on our previous transfers?
Yes, maybe I'll address the second question first,
Okay.
and then I think Brian Polson may have even more knowledge on the first question. So we've been very fortunate. We have not, while we've received limited comments on our prior CEQA documents associated with water transfer, they've been, I would call, relatively run-of-the-mill regulatory agency comments where they kind of talk about their jurisdiction over the transfer. Our transfers to date have really been without controversy. And I think that also reflects the diligence of our staff in terms of making sure that we have a very thorough CEQA document. I also think we're fortunate in that despite this is a reoperation of our reservoirs, we're really within our normal operating parameters in terms of stream flows and essentially environmental conditions that you would see. So we're not really creating environmental impacts that the system would not otherwise see in kind of the range of our normal operations. So it's a fairly environmentally benign action. And perhaps Mr. Polson has more details on the reference to action that you first mentioned.
Yeah, and just, yeah, I do. I'll comment on that. But I think Elizabeth mentioned this, but historically, the district has analyzed its the environmental impacts associated with its transfers under CEQA and published negative declarations, as I recall. That has involved, as Elizabeth mentioned, some interaction with regulatory agencies, but they have, as she said, largely gone uncontested. The difference in with the water transfer that you mentioned between San Juan Water District and Citrus Heights Water District, its wholesale customer, is that the transfer is actually between San Juan and Sac Suburban. Citrus Heights has sued San Juan, alleging violations of CEQA, because San Juan noticed an exemption from CEQA for purposes of its transfer. Basically, they said, we're not exempt to CEQA because we're using existing facilities and therefore not going to analyze. There are no impacts to analyze. That is what resulted in the lawsuit by Citrus Heights. But I will just say that that case is not about CEQA. There is, this is a legal term, there is beef between the two agencies. And I think that what we're witnessing is simply two agencies that are beefing, and one sees an opportunity to contest another. This is not the first lawsuit filed by Citrus Heights Water District against its wholesale provider, San Juan Water District. Though this is a CEQA lawsuit compared to the one previously, which was more of a rates lawsuit. So I don't see any risk to the district, both because, as I said, we're not beefing with Citrus Heights or anyone else, and that, as far as I'm aware, and because we're going to pursue a different pathway under CEQA for purposes of analyzing our environmental impacts, as opposed to just declaring the project exempt entirely.
Thank you, Brian. And just to wrap up that topic, the proposed agreement also does anticipate the potential for, I'll call it, controversy, and essentially provides a time period for an opt-out if we start to see that there, is strong opinions about the water transfer, and essentially the parties can determine that it's not worthwhile to proceed with the transfer if we are going to be facing essentially challenges in litigation. So the agreement does anticipate that that is a possibility and gives an off-ramp if there starts to be troubled waters. And so we have reached the board options. So option 1, approve the 2026 temporary water purchase and sale agreement with Westlands Water District and authorize the general manager to execute the agreement and any related documents necessary to complete the water transfer. And we are recommending option 1 if there are any additional questions.
I'll move one.
Second.
Okay, we are now taking public comment on the approval of action item 11. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding the approval of this item, please refer to the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of action item 11. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes.
Okay. We have a motion to approve the 2026 temporary water purchase and sale agreement with Westlands Water District and authorize the general manager to execute the agreement and any related documents necessary to complete the water transfer. Moved by Director Mansfield and seconded by Director Dwyer. We are ready for the vote.
Okay, board members, please vote.
And motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, let's move on to item number 12 on our agenda. This is for the general manager.
Good morning, President Anzini, members of the board. My name is Pravani Vandya. I'm the General Manager for El Dorado Irrigation District. Today I'm going to present to you a vision for our water future that was put together through the Association of California Water Agencies and ask that you consider a resolution of support. State and local water suppliers are on the forefront of California's water management to sustain communities, agricultural land, and the economy. Water managers across the state are already pursuing local, practical, and innovative solutions, but long-term, meaningful progress requires a strong state partnership to achieve these shared goals. Bold leadership is needed to set a unified direction, accelerate action, and deliver results that prepare California for an increasingly uncertain future. Some background. The Association of California Water Agencies, ACWA, is a statewide coalition of which EID is a member. ACWA convened a special work group to develop a vision for California's water priorities, in which I participated as a representative of Region 3. ACWA's vision for a water future was developed and identifies 4 key priorities and associated recommendations. The first of those priorities are for California to lead on water, recognize water as an essential resource and the infrastructure that underpins California's economy, housing growth, food production, environmental health, and community resilience. Sustained executive leadership is needed to improve water supply reliability, accelerate climate resilience, and ensure coordinated action across state government. Number 2 is protecting affordability. Ensure safe and reliable water remains affordable by strengthening sustained state investment and funding partnerships with local, regional, and federal agencies to address rising infrastructure, climate, and regulatory costs. California's ratepayers fund more than 85% of the system. Without predictable investment, these costs will increasingly fall on households, businesses, and farmers. Priority 3 is to deliver critical infrastructure. Future-proof California's critical water infrastructure to ensure reliable supplies in the face of climate change, growing economic and community demands, and escalating emergency risks. This requires strengthening the statewide water system, including both built and natural infrastructure, while advancing regional resilience to maximize system-wide reliability. The 4th priority is to modernize water management. Improve California's regulatory and operational systems so water projects can move forward reliably and efficiently. Infrastructure can be operated more flexibly, and agencies can respond more rapidly to changing conditions. California's regulatory framework should deliver clear, coordinated decisions grounded in the best available science, while maintaining environmental protections, public transparency, and California's existing water rights priority system. EID struggles with deferred maintenance of aging infrastructure. An example within the EID system is our steel tanks that have a shortened life cycle and high repair costs that we are grappling with on a continuous basis. The board options today are to adopt a resolution in support of the Association of California Water Agencies' Vision for Our Water Future initiative. And staff recommendation today is to choose option 1. Thank you. And I'm available for questions or comments.
Board members,
I'll move option 1.
I'll second.
discussion? Questions? All right.
Okay, we are now taking public comment on the approval of action item number 12. If you're present in the meeting room and would like to provide public comment regarding this item, please come to the microphone and state your name for the record. If anyone participating virtually would like to provide public comment regarding approval of this item, please feel free to use the instructions provided on the first page of today's agenda. President Anzini, it does not appear that any member of the public is wishing to speak on the approval of action item 12. Would you like me to call for the vote?
Yes, please.
Okay. We have a motion to adopt a resolution in support of the Association of California Water Agencies, ACWA, Vision for Our Water Future initiative, moved by Director Day and seconded by Director Dwyer. We are ready for the vote.
Board members, please vote.
The motion passes.
Thank you.
All right. This concludes the rest of our meeting. We'll move on to any directions or assignments, review. Any board members see anything outstanding?
I believe we have one.
Oh.
There was a request by President Anzini to bring forward in the future an item in regards to glyphosate herbicides in the Caldor fire area.
Yes, thank you.
Not just that. She mentioned some other chemicals as well.
Okay.
There's,
And how we interact with the forest.
Okay.
Again, sorry, posting and noticing and all that stuff.
We'll just say herbicides is probably the
Yes.
category.
Okay.
and when we do, I'd like to suggest that we invite Yvonne or
Yeah, I think.
Dildine, I forget what her full name is, invite her to come in or on Zoom. Either way.
Absolutely, yes, and we have her email. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe we should also have a Forest Service, coordinate with the Forest Service and invite them to participate as well.
Good idea.
The U.S. Department of Forestry? Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Do
I
we
think,
have any other items?
this concludes our meeting. Meeting adjourned.